Well, good morning and welcome to Flight Lines, the stories behind the stories. And my guest today is Andy Tuck. We've known each other for quite a few years.
Quite a
Uh,
few.
you know, been involved in the school board when I was teaching at Lake Placid and then when I was administrator. So um, it's kind of fun to be able to sit down with you and ask some questions about your background and how you got involved in politics. But I guess we'll start there. I mean, of all the things you could have done, what was the trigger to get into politics and get on the school board and such?
Well, it's an interesting story. I don't know that I really looked to get into politics. Politics was not the thing that I was shooting for. And if we've got time, I'll tell you the whole story.
Yeah, no, we have time.
Um, growing up, we grew up poor, like a lot of people did. My my mother paid $1,200 for a single wide mobile home that my sister and I grew up in, and she pretty much beat it into her head that the only way out of poverty was education,
Education.
was good education. And so I like to think that it was me that wanted that, but it was pretty much not an option where my mother was concerned. And fortunately, there were some folks that made it possible for me to get a good education. Uh, the debt that I owed was to never forget it.
Sure.
And so when this seat came open in 2005, I saw my opportunity to give back. Uh, Not necessarily was politics part of the plan. It was just a way to give back, and I felt like I contributed uh, quite a bit during that 8 years. And then 8 years later, in 2014, was asked by Governor Scott to serve on the state board of education. And what some people may know, some people may not know, is the school board of Highlands County pays a salary. Uh, the state board of education does not. It's a volunteer
Sure.
position. So I'm probably the only person that you know of that left a paying position for a
Sure.
non-paying position. Uh, if if you don't know that, ask my wife. She pretty much reminds me on a weekly basis that I left money on the table to go to a non-paying position, but I felt like that was the best way for me to impact education and the lives of students the most.
So let's talk about the state appointment. What were you able to do? What perspectives did you gain from being up in Tallahassee?
Well, one of the things that I had a unique position on is I was the only, and so far, and the only rural county board member that ever served on state board of education.
Really? Wow.
And as a result, I was the vice chair and was the chair for 2 years. I doubt that you'll ever see a rural county representative
That
being
to me
chair.
sounds unusual because I would say most of Florida is rural in
It
many
it, it
ways.
is, but as you know, politics uh,
Where the
is
people are.
is about money and where the people are, and Orlando and Miami and Jacksonville and Tampa. Those are where the people are, and that's where those high profile appointments comes from. Governor Scott looked at things differently, and he wanted somebody from a rural area because if you think about it, there's two types of school districts in Florida. There's the rural and there's the urban or the
Yeah.
big city. And some of those big city people, they just don't have a clue what we deal with in rural areas. So I feel like I brought a perspective that nobody else could to that board.
So what was you know, what was the reason or how did the process go that you left that position?
You term out.
Okay.
You can only do 8 years on the board, and that's the only one of the only positions that are appointed that has term limits up there.
Wow.
Department of Transportation, you can be on there forever, those types of things, but you term out at 8 years on the board of education.
What did you enjoy most about it?
Um, Educating the bigger city people on what we do in rural counties.
Yeah.
They have no clue. Somebody from Miami has no clue what a county like Liberty County or Madison County may deal with.
What are some of the examples of the differences?
Transportation, for instance, you would in a place like Highlands County, or transportation, uh, the allocation from the state covers maybe 40% of the transportation
It's a huge
expenses.
part of our budget.
It's a huge part of our budget.
Yeah.
You've got 12,000 students in Highlands County, all over the county. You go to some place like Miami, you may have 12,000 students in 2 city blocks. It's
Yeah.
totally different.
From Avon Park to Venus. I mean,
Correct.
it's
That's
a lot
right.
of territory.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was some of the interesting things that I was able to I say educate those people. They're good people. They're just big city people. They need to go someplace. They get on a plane and they fly over Highlands County. They don't drive through Highlands County.
Yeah.
So
Interesting analogy there. Flying over, not going through it.
it's amazing how many people you talk to. I go to Orlando and they'll say, "Where are you from?" And I'll say Highlands County. Well, where's that? It's literally 2 counties over from you. They have no clue
Yeah.
where that place is, because they get on a plane and they fly, or they get on 75 and they drive, or 95 or whatever. They don't come down. So,
Wow.
and we're one of the bigger counties.
Yeah.
One of the bigger rural counties. I mean, you take a county like Lage or DeSoto, and they really have some issues with being rural.
Well, when you look at what we're facing right now in our county, and I'm sure the other ones are just as facing the challenges um, of the budgets and that sort of thing. Where do you see that going? Where do you see our present condition in Highlands County? How do we deal with it?
Well, it all starts with going to the classroom and making sure the classroom comes first. And that's my campaign is going to be. It is from the classroom out approach. Because
I couldn't agree more.
if you keep it about the classroom, then you can't go wrong. The budget, I mean, we will have budget issues. We'll always have budget issues in rural counties, but you have to keep your focus on the mission, and that's educating students. They deserve a high class, world class education, regardless of what their zip code is. And we have to stay focused on the classroom without exception.
Well, you're preaching to the choir here, having spent most of my career in some sort of a classroom. But I have a bias, and I'm interested in your perspective on it. I had the luxury of being in a curriculum that was more project-based and hands-on work. And to me, that was a bit more engaging with my students than, say, maybe an algebra class or a language arts class. Not saying that they're not valuable or couldn't be done differently, but um, I never really had an issue with kids that weren't motivated. And many times, and you know this as well as anyone, a person who's was in my position, I often got students that I won't say nobody else wanted, but they weren't the college bound or some of the more motivated students. But we found a way to get them excited about things that they were learning. And of the probably close to 20 years I was at Lake Placid in one way or another, I probably wrote less than 10 referrals all that time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of just the way we managed the classroom. I had the luxury of having advanced students and beginning students in the same class because of the size of the school, and I had the advanced students mentor the new students, and they would just take them off to the side saying, "We don't mess around in here.
Mm-hmm.
We don't do this or that in here. This is what we do," and it worked out fine. But getting back to the point, I think if we find a way to become more project based and more engaging in what we're doing, whether it's language arts or whether it's algebra or history or whatever. I mean, We got to find ways to get kids excited about learning again.
One of the things that I want to do, I've always wanted to do this, and I will work toward this if I get elected, is I want to see an entrepreneurship program of some sort that starts kids early in middle school. So they have that entrepreneurial
Sure.
mind
Yeah.
that carries it right through high school. And I think it's, I'll tell you this story. I own a business, and my partner in the business, he has his saying is the guy who knows how works for the guy who knows why. And and if you think about that,
That's true.
all the people who have made a lot of money in the world, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, none of those people made their fortunes because they knew how to build a computer or because they knew how to build an iPhone. They made it because they had that vision of knowing what people were going to need and knowing what people are going to want. And that comes from being an entrepreneur. You yourself, you saw what happened with the Green Dragon Chair Company.
Yeah, exactly.
When you were done with that, you didn't have kids that knew how to build chairs. You had kids that knew how to order inventory, who knew how to manage inventory.
And many of them went on to do their own businesses.
And it doesn't matter whether they're building chairs or mowing lawns or making new cell phones. The base is there. Knowing, seeing a need, having a vision, knowing how to order materials,
the transferable skills.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take for every child going forward. Just knowing how to do something is not going to be enough. They're going to have to know why they're doing something. And I want every student to have those abilities going forward, because even if you start your own business or if you work for somebody else, whoever you work for is going to want you to have that entrepreneurial mind.
Right.
And it's very important. I'll tell you another little story. When I first got out of college, I went to work. I was 21 years old. My boss at the time, if he told me to do something, if I had asked, why are we going to do it that way? It's because I'm the boss. And if you want to keep your job, that's what you're going to do. Now that I'm the boss at my company, if you don't ask me why we're doing something that way, I want to know why you're not asking me, because you may have a better way of doing it. You may have a better vision for what we're doing, and efficiency is critical uh, in everything we do.
Well, you hit on something there too. I think is critical for a person who is running a business, leading a team. If they don't know the why, they're not invested in it.
That's right.
And they're not going to give the
That's
extra
exactly
effort.
Right.
It's just a job. But
Mhm.
if they feel valued and feel like their opinion would be considered, yeah, they're gonna be more engaged.
Mhm.
You struck another thing too, and just kind of digress here. When I taught how to operate the most dangerous machine in the shop, which is the table saw, one of the most, I consider it the most, because things can get real bad real fast. Um, if the kids could give me 10 rules about how to operate the machine safely, that was great. But if they didn't know why that rule exists,
That's right.
it didn't make any sense because they didn't own it.
Mhm.
And I remember one day I was cutting some wood, and we had the old Rockwell Delta saw in there. And eventually, when I was the administrator for Career Ticket, I got rid of all those and put in the saw stop system. But we had the old Rockwell Delta, and I was cutting a piece of oak, and it kicked back, and it shot past me and hit the rolling metal door in the back of the Lake Placid shop. And then when it sounded like a gunshot going off, and everybody stopped, and of course I caught my breath for a second, and I looked at everybody and said, that's why we don't stand behind the wood we're cutting.
That's right.
And the idea of the why um, is another thing. When I was doing the aerospace program, and we had the addition to the hangar because we were expanding the program, um, I was waiting for Eric, the county administrator, the building inspector, to come out and take a look at it. Um, and I was just on the computer exploring things, and I found a TED Talk by Seneca about uh, how leaders get people to do things. And it was, you start with a why.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can tell people what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, but if they don't understand the why you're doing it, and they don't buy into that why, nothing's ever going to happen. And I started thinking about, well, that's what we've been doing here, because people would ask me, "What are you doing out there? Are you teaching kids how to fly, fix airplanes, do this, do that?" I said, "Yeah, we do a lot of that." But our purpose is to help them understand what their options and opportunities were and are, like you said, so they can go off and do other things. And that was the why. And when every time I was asked about the program, where I made a presentation around the county and did many of those, I started out why we were doing this, and then I told them how we were doing it. So now Eric comes out, Longshore, and we're talking about the building and the thing in the addition. And I told him, I said, I really enjoy working with your wife. She's a superintendent. She's the third superintendent I've worked with, and she gets it. She understands what we're trying to do out here. And he turned to me and says, "Yeah, it's all about those options and opportunities." And I'm going, "Yes," because that message had become part of the community's feeling and understanding of what we were doing. And when you talk about developing an entrepreneurial um, initiative and attitude within what we do with our curriculum, I think that's spot on, because you're engaging the students.
Right. That's right.
They see what's in it for them.
And they know that's just a way of creating a lifelong learner. Uh,
Yeah.
because you'll always have to become more efficient. You'll always have to become more engaged in what you're doing and finding better ways to do things. So I don't, and I think you got to start that at an early age. Get them interested and get them hooked on being a business person, because it doesn't matter what you're doing, or if you're doing it for somebody else, they're going to want you to have that mindset.
Well, I think it was last year, the year before. Wasn't that long ago. A bunch of us went over to Pinellas County and looked at what their program was over there. They have a high school where the community industry has partnered with the school district,
Mm-hmm.
and just an amazing program
Mm-hmm.
as far as what they're doing. Uh, I've asked some folks in the school board here. I said, what do you see our future to be? And they said that's the model, but it's a different mindset. It's going to take some significant changes if we're going to follow that kind of a model, because one, the community's got to get behind it. The businesses have to get engaged in it and put some skin in the game. And quite frankly, this is my own personal attitude based on my experience in education for over 50 years. Um, but there's got to be a different mindset
Right.
in our leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
God bless those people that they're doing their best. Their heart's in the right place, but we can't continue to do the same things we've done year after year and expect a different result.
You're 100% correct.
When you see and I wrote an article on this, folks, and I did a podcast on it. And the title was, "Do we change by choice or by crisis?" And unfortunately, we often change by crisis rather than choice. Um, and when we have the issue now, as it's somewhat been labeled, of a declining enrollment causing the budget concerns, my feeling is, okay, well, let's provide the students who are going some other place something as good, if not better, than where they're going.
100%.
And then we won't have the issues of declining enrollment. I mean, when we looked at the aerospace program, and I heard this many times, because early on I would interview and talk to every kid that we enrolled, because we had a waiting list and we had to make some decisions. But I often heard more than once, parents said, "We moved here to Highlands County because we wanted our kid to be in that program."
Mm.
And that's a pretty cool statement. And I look at the aviation aerospace program. I think it's one of the crown jewels that we have because of what we do with the kids, but more importantly, what we do with the community partners that we have.
Mm.
And I hope as the budget issues start to get sorted out that our program doesn't get negatively impacted. Um, but who knows?
Right.
You and I have seen it too many times.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right. That's right.
to try and cut something to keep the status quo when really you really need to rethink and do the whole thing differently.
We can't take away from the students in the classroom or in the programs. Uh, that has to be help on us. And like I said, it's from the classroom out.
Yeah.
That is my focus, is work from the classroom out. And everything else has to fit into the place. So
Well, I've had the opportunity to be at a lot of different levels within the district, and when I was the teachers union president and chief negotiator, um, I discovered that, and this is nothing particular in Highlands County, it's pretty much universal in education. But you have administrators and then you have leaders, and there's a significant difference. They may have the title assistant principal or department head, whatever it might be, but administrator gets things done efficiently and that sort of thing. But a leader is a coach, is a person who inspires, a person who gets down with the people and leads by example. And I can look back and I can name a few that when I was doing what I was doing uh, that exemplified that. Ann Lindsay, Danny Johnson, and Avon Park. Um, Ruth Heckman, who I worked with at Lake Placid. Um, so many different people uh, were the ones that were the folks who were coaching,
right.
and inspiring. I mean, when I went to Ruth early on in 1998 and I said, I want to start an aerospace class, and rather than trying to say, well, that's not what we do, she looked at me and says, go ahead.
Right. Right.
How many times has something like that happened?
Those people didn't demand respect; they commanded respect.
Yeah.
And they were good. Every one of them you mentioned.
Yeah.
I've got the most respect in the world for all.
And those are the people that we need to foster and develop within our programs. Um, so you're looking at the classroom as the primary foundation of what we're trying to do and what we are doing. How do we make sure that happens?
Well, first thing we've got to do is make sure our teachers are paid the way they should be paid.
Yeah.
Uh, and that has gotten a lot better. I know when my wife started teaching, she's going to kill me for saying this, 32 years ago. I think she was making $21,000 a year.
Yeah.
Uh, Today, a starting teacher is at $50,000 a year. So it has gotten a lot better. But one of the things that we will all preach out there is that teachers should be held on the same level as doctors and lawyers and the rest of them. Commissioner Pam Stewart's favorite saying was, teachers make all other professions possible.
Yes.
And that's true. Uh, so we have to look at whatever we've got to do. And I'm going to speak for Highlands County, not just overall.
Sure.
But Highlands County needs to have the highest paid teachers in the state of Florida. If there's anybody out there listening to this or later on listening, they're like, well, he's nuts. There's no way we can do that. Yes, there is. There's a way we can do that. We should not have a long-term sub or a uncertified teacher in a classroom. There should be nothing. We should have teachers knocking on the door wanting to come to teach here. We got a great county. We're right in the center of the state. There's everything wonderful about Highlands County.
Yeah, you're right.
All my life.
You're absolutely right.
And there should not be an open teaching position in Highlands County because there's no reason why somebody wouldn't want to live here. So we've got to start with our teachers we need to focus on them and get them paid the way they need to be paid to have a full and have more knocking on the door. I mean, that's what we need to be focused
I couldn't agree with you more. And again, I reflect back on my 50 plus years of teaching in various venues. And, when you're putting a salary schedule together, like you say, put it where the people are going to want to be here. Besides the salary, it's the quality of life, is like you said. And I have found the students here in the county, and I've taught many of them in many different places. Um, they're great kids,
They are.
and I've been in other places where it hasn't quite been that way,
Mhm.
being in the classroom was an adventure that really sometimes it was not pleasant. But kids in this county, again, if they're engaged, if they're excited about what they're learning and they see the value in it, you mentioned something else that triggered a thought in me. I often said to a teacher, I said, if the students can't answer why they're learning what you're presenting, then something's wrong.
Mhm.
If they don't understand what's in it for them, rather than do it because I told you to, or it's going to be important someday, if they don't see that initial connection of what it is and why it's valuable, they're going to tune you out. They're going to play the game to get through the period, to get out in the hallway to visit with their friends. But,
That's right. That's
you
right.
know, and it's, again, students have changed. The students I first encountered when I first got out of college in 1970, they're different. The kids want to know why,
Mhm.
and if you can't tell them why, instantaneously they're checked out. I mean, they'll be polite, like I said, they'll play the game. They'll do the test, they'll do whatever else. But uh, again, you mentioned the Green Dragon Chair Company. I remember one day Ruth walked into the classroom, um, and we had a kind of an L-shaped thing because of the drafting room, and she came in to the shop entrance in the, the narrow L. And I was just standing back there where we had the inventory of parts, and the place was humming. I mean, they were just, every kid at every station was doing something. They were working together, and she just looked at me. She says, "I can't believe it." And it was just, they were fully engaged because we had a system where they actually had kind of a profit sharing thing. So we couldn't share the money with them, but based on our profit margin at the end of the month, based on what we produced, what it costs us to produce, what was our net profit, we had a formula that basically went to a grade point, some points that went to their final grade. If you had a C average, you got 1 point. You had a B average, you got 2 points. You had an A average, you got 3 points.
Mhm.
And boy, they worked for those points.
Sure. Sure.
And but again, it wasn't my program; it was their program,
Right. Right.
and the transferable skills were significant.
That's what I said earlier. That the things that they learned, knowing how to build a chair, was the least of what they learned.
Yeah,
That's
order of operations.
yeah, yeah. That's what's so critical. I've met plumbers and electricians that are broke, but they didn't go broke because they weren't good plumbers or electricians. It was because of order of operations that caused problems.
Yeah.
So that's that was a great program. I talk about that a lot when I'm talking
Well,
about my
here's the
students.
interesting thing too, is when I left, I went up to go to the college for a short time to be the adult education director, and then it took a number of people to replace me at Lake Placid,
Hmm.
and I think it was 3 or 4 people they went through. And I stopped in one day to see how things are going at the high school. And Tony Stuyvesant, which is another person, and I really, really appreciated some well. She said to me, "How are things going at the college?" And I said, "They're okay." He says, "We want you back. Will you come back?" And I
Tony was not one to mince words, so if she
no,
said that,
no,
she meant it.
and she meant, and I came back, and put the program back together, and then restarted the aviation program again. But um, it's and another thing we did a number of years ago. I guess is probably in the 1999, 2002, somewhere around there. We took a trip, and I was invited to be a part of it because I was in the union at the time, to the East Coast. And for life of me, I can't remember the school district, but they were looking at what they were doing in all the curriculums, whether it be math, science, social studies, uh, hands-on, the arts programs were all integrated, and they were all project-based. And if you're in the math program, you were dealing with things in the shop program or the other. I mean, everything was cross curricular. Now it took a fair amount of effort to do that because you had to have more planning time for the teachers. You had to have more resources, but it wasn't anything out of unreasonable. But their test scores were through the roof because these kids were absorbing all these things and learning the practical skills of what they needed to learn uh, because they were engaged.
Right. That's
You
right.
know,
No,
and
that's right.
and
It's tough to do that though, 'cause like you said, you've got to have a lot of planning
it's a paradigm
yeah,
shift,
yeah,
a significant
that's the way
paradigm
it should
shift.
be. Yeah.
Well, I think, I a few weeks ago, I had a chance to drive some kids up to um, the Rotary's SVRTL. It's a leadership program for seniors,
Mhm.
and so I had four girls in the truck with me. I was driving them up, and then John Barban was taking the rest of them. We brought a bunch of kids up from our Rotary Club. And I said to him, tell me about what's going on in the classroom. Tell me about, your best teachers and why you like them and that sort of thing. And then I listened, and then I said, what would make a difference? And it came, and I talked to him about project-based learning. He said, yeah, that's what we want. That'll mean the most to us.
Right, right.
And I talked about, well, what do you want to do? And one girl wants to be a veterinarian, another one wants to go in this or that, but they were looking for those transferable skills.
Mhm.
Um, I think if we took a survey, again, folks, this is my personal opinion, and I may be way off base on this, in ways I hope I'm not, but if we did an honest to goodness conversation with our teachers, and asked them what they need and how they feel about things, um, I think you'd find that there's some issues, um, that they don't feel as valued as they could be. They don't feel that they have all the support that they need. I was talking to one who I know really well, and she says, "I just want to close my door, lock it, and have them leave me alone and let me survive as best I can."
But, one thing that's always amazed me is every year, DOE, the district, whoever it is, loads more and more on teachers,
Yeah,
and they always arise to the occasion. They always do. And
it's because we care about the kids.
yeah, and so I've got all the faith in the world in our teachers in this district, and because they always come to the table with what needs to be done.
Yeah. Well, um, again, it's the relationship you have with the leadership that you're working with. And I'll tell you a story, and Tony won't mind my sharing this, but um, when I came back, we had to do our lesson plans every week about what we were going to do and how we were going to do it and what were the expected outcomes. Okay, I don't mind doing that, but I mean, when you get right down to it, how many lesson plans do you want me to share about how to safely operate the table saw? I mean, it is what it is, and I've done it for 40 years or more. Anyway, I went up to her and I said, there was a lot of things I needed to do to maintain the machines, and we had lost some of our planning time and that sort of thing. And we were also required to be in a study hall at one period at a time. And I said to her, can you consider taking me out of my study hall and let me have some more planning time, so I can maintain the machines and do those things? And he said, I got a lot of prep I have to do. And I said, I've got three different levels of shop. And, basically when you add the aerospace program, I got 10 preps, 10, 11 preps. And she said, well, it wouldn't be fair to others. I said, well, who else has got preps like I do? She says, well, the band guy's got a bunch. And I said, well, the tuba is not going to cut somebody's fingers off, And I said, I'll do what I can, but I'm not writing any more lesson plans. I said, I don't have time for it. I mean, you know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I'm not really changing much of anything, whether it be in the aerospace program or in the shop program. So, but I don't have time to do that. I'd rather take the time to make sure the equipment's right, and we've got the supplies. And she looked and says, "Okay, you know, I didn't broadcast that to the other teachers, but I mean, again." She made a decision in her mind. She didn't try to hold my feet to the fire and say, "Well, no, you've got to do it." She understood.
Right. Right.
And again, that's a leader. That's not administrator.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember back in '08 when the budget got cut so much, and
Yeah, I do.
one of the things that happened was taking away the middle of the day planning for middle and high school teachers. And I can tell you that is not a popular way to save money when your wife's a middle school teacher.
No. When I first came down here in '98, we had on the block schedule, we had 4 periods a day, and one of them was a planning period every day.
Hmm.
And I loved that schedule because it gave me enough time to do what I needed to do.
Right.
And then the big thing was, well, the math kids aren't being able to carry over things from one semester to another. And, we need to change I mean, in the 20 some years or more, 25 now, 28, I never seemed to have more than one schedule that was consistent more than 2 or 3 years.
Hmm.
Constantly being tweaked
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
quote, save some money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all it did was dilute what we were doing.
Mm.
Um, I'd say there's two things from a teacher's point of view that would be really welcome and valued. One would be an appropriate salary schedule for our experience. And the other is adequate planning time.
Right. Right. And I understand that. My wife's explained it to me in the past. She said, I've got 6 classes from advanced to intensive. And she said, I've got to plan differently for every one of those groups of students. And
they're all mixed together.
Right. And they deserve that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. Well, if you could wave that magic wand over our school district, what would it change? I know we talked about a lot of different things this morning, but that magic wand.
Now, this is a magic wand. This is not
Yeah.
something that I'm advocating, but I'd love to. I know when I went to Florida Southern College, we had, as a student, you had your own personal advisor, and that advisor had 8 students, maybe 10. I don't really remember at the time, but they were our professors.
Right.
And they stayed with you from the whole time you were in college. I was there 2 years. If I'd been there 4 years, I would have had the same advisor. And they helped you track your course uh, as you went through college. And anything you needed, you could deal with that advisor. If I could wave a magic wand, I'd make every teacher an advisor to a group of students that they could have a personal relationship with, and track them through their education and keep them on task, based on what they wanted to do. It's basically a guidance counselor, uh, for lack of better words. Every teacher be a guidance counselor that could support a group of students as they go through.
Well, you've really you've highlighted something that I think is probably the keystone. It's not I'll say keystone because everything else leans on it. And if you take the keystone away, everything falls apart. But it's relationships. One of the things I've discovered in this podcast series that we've done, and it's been a lot of fun, but there's been one common theme throughout every person I've interviewed, every program I've looked at, it's all based on positive relationships.
That's right.
Success of businesses, of personal success, whatever. It's all relationships. And when I look back about my teaching career, and I love working with the students, and um, it was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done in my life. It continues to be, but it's all based on relationships. You know, and when I look back on, I mentioned before, had very little behavior problems in the programs I was in, but it's all based on relationships. I would tell every student in the very first days of class, I said, you know, in the shop, there's a couple non-negotiable rules. You wear closed-toed shoes. Um, you know, you're safe and you don't mess around. Um, and you wear safety glasses all the time. I said, other than that, everything's negotiable. And I said, I'll never lie to you. I'll never dress you down in front of others. And I'll be honest with you. And I expect the same in return. Mm-hmm. You know, and the behavior problems I would have as a student would be reacting and doing things. I had the luxury of having the drafting room right next to the shop, and I would say, "Okay, come with me for a minute." And I'd take him into the draft room with just me and them, and I'd look. This isn't you. What's going on? You know, something's going on. And then they'd unload. You know, something's going on at home. And this is happening. This is happening. You know, and that was coming out in other ways. I said, well, here's the deal. You just sit in here and calm down, and when you're ready, come on out. You know, and they respected that because I didn't dress them down. I didn't make an example of them. That was the problem. I had to find what the underlying issue was. And that relationship carried on for years. And other kids saw that. And I did so much counseling in that shop over the years because you can't teach all the time. You take 15, 20 minutes in a period, you talk about something you're introducing or reinforcing, and then you let them go and do what they're going to do. But as you walked around, you had the time to talk to them, get to know them, you know, how you feeling, what's going on, what's going on. You know, I've looked at your grades in these other courses and they're not as good as they could be. What's going on? Mm-hmm. You know, and I enjoyed that and they appreciated that. But again, it's all relationships. And one of the things that I really was sad to see go in our district, because I thought it was very successful, was the program, and I'm having a blank on the title of it, but the Freshman Foundation, I think is what it was called. That's right. And, you know, making that transition from middle school where they were top dogs to now that they're the underdogs in high school, but just the whole shift is different. And the ability for us to stand in front of the classroom every day and greet them and make them feel welcome and then get, you know, that was the first thing you did. Right. And for some reason, it just went away. And I'm thinking, that worked.
Honestly, I didn't know that had gone away. But that was, to me, it was
a winner.
A winner. You're exactly right.
And
both of my kids were part of the Freshman Foundation. They went to high school at Secret.
You know, and so it's no longer there. And why, I couldn't tell you. I mean, it went away, I think, after I left. I can't remember. But again, paradigm shift, focused on the classroom. Let's talk about Highlands County as a whole, because you mentioned, you know, the ruralness of it and that sort of thing. What do you feel are the positive strengths and elements that Highlands County brings to our students and their families?
Well, I think you have a safe place to raise a family. You're in a great location in the best state in the country. You're There's not a whole lot to do here, but you're not far from a whole lot to do.
That's true. Yeah.
And you know, if you look at our education system, we have some of the greatest teachers in the world right here in Highlands County. Why wouldn't somebody want to live here, put their kids in school here? I know, you know, I look at my daughter. She is a very successful real estate lawyer, state representative. she went to school right here in little Highlands County.
Lake Placid High School.
Sebring High School.
Sebring High School. Okay.
Her dad, I graduated from Lake Placid High School when my parents graduated from Lake Placid High School. So I think we turned out okay.
Yeah, I'd say you did pretty well.
We, we've got a lot of people who have gone through this education system who are very successful people that we don't even know about anymore.
That's true.
Let's see, three sessions ago, maybe 4, the president of the Florida Senate graduated from Sebring High School. Not a lot of people know that. Bill Galvano, he was a Sebring High School graduate. Was at the time controlling the entire budget of the state of Florida.
Wow.
Graduated from right here in Sebring High School. There's so many opportunities in Highlands County in general for families to raise children and say, I just can't say enough good about the education system. We've got some challenges, but
well, I think you're right. And I've again, I bring some perspectives that maybe some others haven't had the opportunity to enjoy, having been in education for so many years in various venues. But you're right. We have a good system. We have a good foundation. But it's also time to make some changes.
It is.
And make some paradigm shifts.
It's good, but it can be a lot better.
Right. And it's going to take some courage of the board itself, the school board itself, of the administrators that we have. But more importantly, it's going to take the support of the community to make the shifts that are going to have to be made. Mm-hmm. And again, we can change by choice or we can change by crisis.
That's right.
And I have confidence that we'll make the right choices the right way. Quite frankly, that's why I voted for you. But, I'm an independent. I've been a Republican. I've been a Democrat, but I'm more of an independent. But it's not about party affiliations. It's about the right people doing the right things in the right place. Right. And I think that's what we need to do. And I hope you find a spot on the board. But I think when we look at our administration and the leaders we have at the district level, there's a lot of really, really good people there. But again, we need to have the right people in the right place doing the right things. And I think it'll take a really honest assessment of everyone involved to saying, am I doing the best I can? Am I in the right position doing what I need to do? Do I need to do things differently, or do I need to move on and do something else?
That's right.
It's an honest assessment, mm-hmm. And I hope we do it. But I hope I'm excited about you being involved, because here's the thing I know about you: whether you win the election or not, you're going to be involved.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's who you are.
That's right.
And that's how.
And like I said, it's important to me. Education, politics is not my thing, but education is. And that's the first question you ask is, how do I get involved in politics? Politics was not in my future. It was important.
It was a vehicle to help make a change.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm so thankful for what you've done and what I hope you can do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
It's been great.
It's been fun. I've never done a podcast before.
Well, it wasn't what you thought it would be, was it? Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. Again, Flight Lines, the stories behind the stories. And this will be airing in a few weeks. And our podcast page on YouTube is where you'll be able to see it and listen to it, but also check into our website, flightlines.com, and you'll see when we're going to be launching this particular session and other things that are going on. So the only thing we ask of you is when you watch the podcast and you're on our website, is hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything that's coming up. And if you've got some ideas about things you'd like to see us explore or things we can do better, let us know. We appreciate it. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great day, and God bless.